Here is a set of 100 multicolored dome LED lights from the Home Accents Holiday brand, which is the Home Depot's store brand for Christmas decorations. I am not normally one for LED Christmas lights. I grew up in the era where there was no such thing as an LED Christmas light. Everything was still incandescent. And to me, LED Christmas lights just don't say Christmas like an incandescent one does. Although some of the LED strings have gotten better over time, the majority of the LED Christmas lights, they don't have that warm, cozy Christmas feel glow to them, which I really enjoy. Now, the strings of LED Christmas lights that do have good coloring, which are there far and few between, a lot of those still have a problem, which is a flicker. A lot of people don't seem to be able to see the flicker. I unfortunately appear to be extremely sensitive to the flicker, so even the LED lights have the better coloring, I still don't use them because the flickering is very distracting to me. And although I've never really had Christmas lights give me a headache, if I try to use regular LED lights around a house, like an LED bulb and a lamp or something like that, I usually get a headache. So I tend to just stay away from LED lights. However, I do have some nostalgia to LED Christmas lights, and I consequently like to do one room in the house with LEDs because there was a time back in the early 2010s, and this is when these first started to become popular. Right around the late 2000s, early 2010s, they started to show up on the market. I used to do a big display of Christmas lights at my parents' house, and there was this, I want to say it was 2011, I think. There was a big to-do about the light bill being too much, and we got to switch to these incandescent, or rather, we got to get rid of these incandescent and switch to these LED Christmas lights, and we bought all these LED Christmas lights, and they were just never the same. It didn't look the same, but that did cause me to have, at this point in life, some nostalgia to these LED lights because they bring back a lot of good memories from Christmases of the early 2010s. So every year I like to try a couple different strings. These are one of the cheapest ones at the Home Depot right now, and I do distinctly remember some of these dome lights. They were kind of cool when they first came out, and then it was, after so many years, it's like they just don't look like Christmas, and they kind of lost their novelty being a new product. But when I saw these here, I says, let's revisit them. I'm sure they'll look kind of nostalgic. I'm curious to see what the coloring looks like, how bad the flicker is, etc. So let's take a look at the box first. The lighted length is 28 feet and 10 inches, so the spacing between the bulbs is not very much. They are good for indoor and outdoor use according to the box. The additional features connect up to 43 sets on one outlet. Now I will say that the number of strings you can connect together when it comes to these DEL lights is fantastic. It makes it so much easier to decorate on large scales because you don't have a ridiculous power draw like you do with the incandescents, particularly the old school C7 and C9s. Replaceable bulbs, which is fine, but I highly doubt that you're going to be able to find replacements anywhere than the couple that are included in the box. It includes 2 spare bulbs and 2 fuses, so I don't know if that's 2 fuses in total, including the one that's currently installed in a plug, or 2 spare fuses. Green wire, 28 feet 10 inch lighted length, and 80% energy savings. We'll measure that and find out if that's true or not. That's probably accurate. Allegedly, it has a 25,000 hour bulb life, so it's claiming approximately 15 holiday seasons, but that's probably based on some very short usage time. There is an asterisk at the end, which usually means the sentence is a lie. I don't see where the asterisk, oh, here it is. based on an average of 1,500 hours per use of holiday season. Now I have a calculator down here. I tend to run the lights for about 2 months. I try to have the display done by late November, and then I take it down at the end of January. So I get a solid 2 months out of my lights. And they might run, it gets dark in this part of the country by 4 or 5 o'clock during the winter, so it's not unusual that they're going to run 8 hours a day. So 8 times 60, I can't compute that off the top of my head, but I'd be willing to bet that that's more than 1,500. I will calculate that and leave it in the video box, because maybe it's not. I don't know. Limited warranty 3 years, and it says this product is guaranteed to be free of defects in materials and workmanship, not including normal wear and tear. So if it breaks from being outside, I assume that they're going to consider that normal wear and tear, and you're not going to get anything out of the warranty. It looks like the lead wire is just under a foot long. Actually, it's not, because it's probably half the lead wire and half of the other side, so probably 6 or 8 inch lead wire tops. These are made in Cambodia, which is kind of unusual. You don't see that too often. And these are model number TY-100LD-M. Alright, let's open this up and see what we got inside. I kind of like the box. It's the same type of design as the C9 lights have. It's very simple but attractive. It shows the product, it shows a couple basic features and identifying items, but it's not overcrowded with text, it's not overcrowded with fancy graphics. It's a nice package. And then I guess the Home Depot item number is 10031935527. Oh, and just going back to this. This is kind of I want to say a useless figure, because if you use these outside, between the water getting in the sockets and the wind and the elements or whatever, there's no way the string is going to last 15 seasons. And it's certainly not going to last 25,000 hours, because there's going to be some electrical issue in the string way before then. So if you're buying this based off of the fact it's going to last 25,000 hours, don't bother, because it's not. And that's also part of the reason why, depending on the scale of your decorating, these will not pay for themselves, because they often don't last anywhere near as long as would be nice. Okay, so that's how it comes. We have only 2 spare bulbs. Hopefully only a green or a blue are burnt out. 2 fuses. The manual here actually gives you decent instructions on how to replace the bulbs if you don't know how. And we have a couple of wire ties, and 3 wire ties holding this together. I want to show them all bunched up like this first, because that's our best chance of seeing the flicker. Oh gosh, it flickers something awful. Alright, so the total power consumption is 0.01 amps, 1.2 watts. So if the string only draws approximately 1 watt, or 0.01 amps, and it says, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and get the calculator, because there's enough things that I've wanted to calculate thus far during this video that we have not been able to, and it would really add some interest to the video to be able to calculate these figures. At least I think it would. With the incandescent strings, the number of sets you can plug together is usually considerably less than what the fuse can electrically handle and what the wiring can electrically handle. And I think it's going to be the same here, because 43 sets would only give you 43 watts, and certainly the fuse and the wiring can carry a lot more power than just 43 watts. So first off, let's revisit the figure of how many hours. That's a nice blurry image on the screen here. How many hours per season will this be used? So in my world, we'll say we use them 8 hours a day times 60 days. That is 480 hours. Huh, that's unusual. So the figure that this gives is based off of quite a bit of usage. So 25,000 hours divided by 15. So according to Home Accents Holiday, they expect you to run the lights for 1,667 hours approximately per season. That's quite a bit. How many days is that? That's 70 days. That's a lot. I bet this says it's only for temporary installation of 90 days or less. So that's pretty much expecting you to run this almost continuously through Christmas. Huh. I don't think that the majority of people use Christmas lights anywhere near 1,500 hours per season. I think that's ridiculous, actually. I think that number I came up with, 8 times 60, let's just round it up to 500 to make it a nice number. I think 500 hours per season is a much more reasonable and typical lifespan. That's very interesting to me, because normally, at least when it comes to regular everyday lighting, these figures are usually set up with very low numbers. For instance, most light bulb claims are, when it says it lasts a certain number of hours, the number of hours is calculated based off of 3 hours per day of usage, which is nowhere near what's typical. I think most people use the lights more than 3 hours per day. So I find it very interesting that these are using an astronomically high figure, whereas lighting typically uses an astronomically low figure, of course, to make the product seem better with puffed up numbers that you're not actually going to achieve. So that's interesting. So, very strange. So according to the box, it draws 0.04 amps and 4.8 watts. According to my testing here, it only takes 0.01 amps and 1.2 watts. That's at 119.9 volts. These have a power factor of 0.66, which is very poor, or maybe the voltage is just, or the amps and stuff is just too low for this meter to read it accurately. I'm not sure. That might be why it's jumping around here. Yeah, 1.3 watts and 0.01 amps. That's hardly any electricity. So let's see electrically, if the fuse is 3 amps, which it probably is. Let's see, what does the plug say? The plug says 3 amps fuse. So 3 divided by 0.01 equals 300. Duh, that I should be able to calculate by myself. So in theory, you can plug almost 300 of these strings together. You really, from an electrical perspective, you're only supposed to load the circuit up 80%. So let's say you can plug in about 250 of these together before there becomes an overload condition. So I don't know why it says only 43 sets. I mean, even if you do 43 sets times what it claims, 43 times 4.8, that still is only 206 the watts, which is nowhere near what the fuse is actually rated for. Because the fuse is good for 360 watts. Well, actually, this is not power factor 1, so that calculation is not completely accurate, but that's strange. I don't know why it's rating it so low. Not that 43 is a small number of strings, but you really could do quite a bit more than that. Okay, so all the technical stuff aside, UL for indoor and outdoor, it's totally blurry. And the date code, just to confirm that these are from this year's stock, the date code is 11/2025, so it was in fact made this year. Well, actually, that doesn't make any sense because we're not in, it's only 10/2025. Maybe that date code's not as simple as it seems. Well, whatever. I'm pretty sure that these are from this year. So, as far as the coloring goes, I don't like the coloring. It's got that weird, kind of eerie LED cool glow. It doesn't have a nice, warm, inviting Christmas feel at all. And another thing I don't particularly like about this shape of bulb is that it's directional. So as you can see here on my table, it's like a spotlight. It lights up the center very bright, but then not much around it. So when these are on a tree, it's not going to illuminate the tree branches very nicely. As far as looking at them goes, if your eye happens to hit right in the center, you get a glare in your eye, just like there's a glare on the camera right now. So I just don't particularly like these that much. And I find that the optics on a lot of these LED lights are similar to this. Some are definitely better than others. The faceted ones are much better than this. But this is kind of weird. And as far as the flickering goes, these flicker something awful. So if we zoom in enough here, you might see some banding on the camera. Or maybe this is the... it's not focusing in close enough, I don't think. Typically when you have a flickering LED bulb, you'll get banding across the camera because the camera's refresh rate is just ever so slightly off of the refresh rate of the lights, which is probably 60 hertz. Yeah, these are a flickering mess. Well, let's take them apart because sometimes they do look different when they are apart versus when they're in all bunched up like this. Alright, so a couple things to note here. The bulb spacing is very short, which is unfortunately becoming very common nowadays. Which is, good and bad. It's good on a tree, not so good on a house or other things you're trying to decorate besides trees. The bulb spacing is only about 3 inches or 8 centimeters, so very, very short. Seems to become shorter and shorter every year as these manufacturers try to cut costs by using less copper wire in the lights. So as I separated them out here, the flicker becomes a lot more tolerable. I don't see much flicker at all in the strings as I separate them apart. When they're all bunched up together, the flickering is terrible. I can really easily tell. Over here, not so bad. If I'm moving around, or if the lights are moving around in the wind or whatever, I can definitely see the flicker. If I move them at all, the flicker becomes very obvious to me. Or if I move, or if I see them out of the corner of my eye, they definitely flicker. But looking right at them, not moving, not too bad. Now, if you notice here, I'm actually going to go turn the rest of these lights off so it's completely dark in here so I can demonstrate this point. This is another thing I don't like about LED lights versus the incandescent ones. Oh, now you can see the flicker. Okay, good. Let's see if it becomes worse with a whole bunch of them. Now it seems to only be picking up the flicker in certain ways here. Okay, see how it's like shifting around like that on the video? It's hard to explain. That's the frequency shift. So the camera is recording at 59.94 frames per second, and the electricity is operating at 60 frames. Well, electricity doesn't have frames. The electricity oscillates at 60 hertz. And so the refresh rate of the lights and the camera is just a touch off. So every couple seconds, it kind of like phases out of sync and then goes back into sync. And that's what you're seeing there. It's not coming back up at this particular moment there. It just did it again. That shift where like looks like one is on and one is off, that's the flickering. It's hard to show on the camera with a bunch of small diodes. If you have one big LED bulb, like a basic bulb for a lamp or something, it's very easy to show. Now, for whatever reason, however the camera has adjusted itself, you can really see the flickering pretty bad. That's for the people that aren't affected by this, which is a large portion of the population. This is kind of what it looks like to me, and it's extremely distracting, and that's why I can't use them. So here's one of the things I don't like about LED lighting. So I'm going to adjust this camera so that it pretty much matches what I'm seeing in person. This is a very close match to what I see in person. If you have a lot of these lights together, they will illuminate the space. But as you can see, it's only like little strobes. The strobing, like, see, when I'm talking about, like, you got a line here, like little strobe lights, not strobe lights, like spotlights, floodlights, right? Because strobe lights flash, that's not really the right terminology. It's like little flashlights almost shining around. It's not a nice, smooth, even illumination. That is specific to this particular shape of bulb. What's not specific to this shape and is more typical of LEDs in general is how the area around the lights is kind of dark. If this was an incandescent string of lights, in fact, I'm going to get one out just to show what I'm talking about here. I happen to have a couple on hand nearby in this box. Let's see if these are working. These are working. Okay. So I'm going to plug these incandescent lights in. These are very old. These are the ones I like to use around my house. So notice how with these LED lights, oh man, kicking the tripod a lot in this video. The table is dark. The wall behind it is dark. The lights themselves are pretty bright, but they're not lighting up the area. This is a fatality when you're decorating a live tree and you want to draw out the textures of the tree. You want to see the bark on the trunk. You want to see the needles. The LED lights don't do it. They stink in that regards. I'm going to go ahead and plug in this incandescent string and look at the difference that you're going to see. Okay, this is older, so there's a lot more space between the bulbs, but I'll try to put them a little bit closer together to be about the same as the LED set here. Alright, notice how much brighter the illumination of the area around the lights is. Try to get this to match the way I see it. Right about there. So look at the LEDs in the back here, barely lighting up the area around it, and look at the incandescents lighting up the area around it. This is another thing that's always bothered me about these LED lights, and the majority of the LED lights I've tested have this failure point. I think it's partially to do with the optics and partially something else, I'm not really sure. But I've tried a lot of different shapes of LED Christmas lights over the years, and almost all of them have this effect where it doesn't light up the tree. Don't like that. But it's not specific to this set. The majority of them are like that. So my pick is the incandescent all day, every day. Probably always will be. I have noticed this year and the last couple of years that I think manufacturers are starting to catch on to the fact that there are a decent number of people that are still dissatisfied with these LED lights and are still using the incandescent and prefer the incandescent. And so we have seen over the last couple of years, True Tone is a good example. We have had companies come out and make lights with the intention of trying to replicate the old school incandescent lights as much as possible. And some of them are very good. The True Tones are very good in terms of coloring, but they flicker I can see the flicker. It bothers me. Most people can't see it. Most people would be fine with them. I can't use them. This year, Home Accents Holiday has also come out with a vintage branded LED string. It doesn't seem to flicker that bad, but it just looks off to me. I've seen some at Lowe's this year that kind of look like the old C9 opaque lights. I might buy a set of those just to try them out. They seemed decent. So it's coming around. These LED lights are getting better every year, and I think that manufacturers are going in the right direction in terms of these incandescent replica style bulbs. But these basic ones like this, which are the only semi-affordable ones, even these cost, this is a 100 string and I think it costs about $10. A basic incandescent string costs $3. So this costs, 3 times that of an incandescent string. It doesn't look as nice, and chances are if you're using it outside especially, it's not going to last any longer. It's more difficult to repair. Spare parts are not easily available. Yeah, it uses less electricity, and granted, if you're decorating on the scheme that I do, where we're talking hundreds and hundreds of strings around the property, yeah, it's a huge difference in power consumption, but you're giving up that Christmas appearance, in my opinion, and it's a huge initial investment to buy these things, and I just don't think that they last long enough to actually, so-called pay for themselves, if you will, in the savings. So, at the end of the day, this is not a terrible string. It's no worse than any of the other ones I've used. The coloring is that very typical LED kind of cold, cool colors, which some people like. Some people prefer the vivid colors of the LED over the soft colors of incandescent. Personal preference. I prefer the incandescent in that regard. These have more of a cooler color temperature, vivid colors. These are not the worst flickering strings I've ever seen, but if you are in the small group of people that are sensitive to the flicker, I can see it. That does not mean everyone's going to see it. In fact, most people probably won't see it. But if you can see LED flicker, you'll probably see it in these. $10 is kind of steep, but that's just what they are now. I can't speak to the longevity of these things. This is the first year I've used them. These have the little clips on them on the side of the bulb here. And I have found, at least with the incandescent bulbs, when this clip is present, the strings do tend to be a little more reliable. So that's something that may hint that these are a little better. 3-year warranty is not bad. That's more than what you usually get, but again, it sounds like the warranty kind of doesn't cover the strings not holding up in the elements, which is very disappointing, but not surprising. And the bulbs are very tightly spaced. Pretty common nowadays. Nice if you're working on a tree, I suppose, but the rental lights around a windowsill, door frame, rooftop, not as nice because the strings don't go that far. They're not for me, but some people I'm sure will find these totally satisfactory. Do they replace incandescent lights? Absolutely not. Do they aspire to? I don't really think so based on some of the other products available this year.